Every highly sensitive person reaches a point where their inner world turns utterly still, not shattered or furious, simply finished. Carl Jung realized this state went beyond mere sadness or fatigue from feelings. He labeled it the ultimate phase of inner enlightenment, and it alarms all who observe it, since once a sensitive soul ceases to invest emotionally, they avoid turning harsh. Instead, they grow impervious, reshaping all dynamics. Jung devoted years examining those attaining this level. His discoveries upend our assumptions regarding sensitivity, inner growth, and self-evolution. The instant a sensitive individual halts, their concern marks not a conclusion to their path. It signals the start of a profoundly stronger chapter. Prior to grasping why sensitive souls withdraw their investment, we must examine the factors pushing them toward that brink. Jung recorded a recurring sequence among his most attuned clients. These weren't folks who sometimes experienced emotions profoundly. They were people whose whole sensory framework acted like a sponge for surrounding sentiments. They entered spaces and instantly soaked up the mental climate. Gatherings with relatives exhausted them through handling concealed strains. Bonds with companions depleted them as they bore dual perspectives in disputes. Intimate bonds almost ruined them, given they sensed their mate's distress more acutely than the mate themselves. Jung termed these folks the sentiment buffers within their circles. They didn't merely sympathize with hardship. They ingested it, digested it, and mysteriously converted it, allowing others to operate. Guardians offloaded their worries onto them. Kin utilized them as complementary counselors. Companions viewed them as mood regulators, existing purely to stabilize their states. And this is what rendered Jung's findings so unsettling. These sensitive souls seldom protested. They embraced this position as their calling. They thought their attunement existed to aid others, that their talent required forfeiting their tranquility for the ease of all around. They bore their wariness as evidence of merit, indication they were decent folks who invested sufficiently to endure. Societal imprinting penetrated profoundly. Since youth, they earned acclaim for being considerate, for uplifting others, for preserving harmony. Each instance they subdued their requirements to suit another. They gained approval. Each occasion they ingested another's fury to avert clashes. They heard praises of advanced maturity. This affirming cycle forged a habit of self-neglect that seemed noble. Yet Jung spotted what the sensitive souls overlooked themselves. Under their kind exterior, their mind maintained logs. Each deception, each disloyalty, each time another exploited their generosity. The sensitive person's subconscious wasn't merely ingesting these events haphazardly. It was indexing trends with exacting detail. Imagine an individual dedicating a decade and a half navigating household chaos. They recognized precisely which phrases sparked their parents' remorse ploys. They grasped the specific sentiment chain their guardian employed to dodge responsibility. They anticipated when kin would fabricate emergencies to recapture focus. They had charted each mental tactic, unfolding nearby with the precision of a mapper plotting known lands. But this is what Jung deemed most extraordinary. Even holding this awareness, they never turned it aggressive. Never. They continued ingesting, continued investing, continued offering, until a core element within started fracturing. Their awareness evolved into a thorough repository of others' habits, whereas their personal desires stayed entombed beneath strata of aid and concession. This generated what Jung pinpointed as a perilous mental divide. Externally, the sensitive person seemed operational, perhaps flourishing in their guardian role. However, below that veneer, bitterness built up akin to tension in a locked vessel. Not aware bitterness that might be voiced and dissipated, but hidden bitterness that tainted their self-perception. The rupture invariably stemmed from disloyalty, not basic letdown or small disagreement. Deep disloyalty from an individual the sensitive person had shielded, supported, and cherished without conditions. Jung noted this ignition across numerous instances, deeming it the spark compelling dark side merging. The narrative recurs with alarming regularity. An individual uncovers their mate's unfaithfulness following years, stabilizing that mate's sentiment swings, gloom, and unease. The grown offspring finds out their guardian has been disparaging them privately after years, acting as the household sentiment anchor. The companion unearths crushing falsehoods after years safeguarding confidences and delivering unwavering backing. What rendered these disloyalties so ruinous wasn't solely the deed. It was the sensitive person's abrupt awareness that they had noticed the alerts throughout and disregarded them. Their instinct had blared the facts for weeks or years, but they had muted it. They had opted to trust the ideal in someone revealing their true nature. They had forsaken themselves to uphold their dream of others' possibilities. This personal forsaking wounded more profoundly than the outward disloyalty. The sensitive person grasped they had joined in their own misuse. They had overlooked their internal guidance, rejected their instincts, and bypassed their limits to sustain connections that were eroding them. The fury they experienced wasn't only aimed at the disloyal one. It targeted themselves for permitting it to persist far past when they recognized better. That insight demolished a basic foundation. Not their spirit, their delusions. Jung named this the retraction of assumptions. The sensitive person had been assigning virtue, capability, and purity to folks lacking these traits. They had perceived not people's realities, but the versions the sensitive person yearned for them to embody. When those assumptions ultimately crumbled, the sensitive person avoided weeping or storming or collapsing as anticipated. Rather, a much more alarming event transpired. They turned serene, abnormally composed. Their gaze altered not with sorrow, but with sharpness. The haze dispersed, and for their initial occasion existing, they viewed existence sans the warp of their fervent optimism. If these words strike a chord within you, hit like on this video and drop a comment saying, "Winds of Thought." Jung portrayed this instant as among the most eerie mental shifts he encountered in his professional work. The sensitive person ceased executing sentiment work. They halted regulating others' emotions. They quit clarifying, defending, or regretting their personal necessities. They avoided proclaiming these alterations. They skipped grand statements. They merely ceased joining the flawed frameworks they had sustained. Relatives who depended on them to arbitrate disagreements abruptly needed to confront one another straight. Mates who had employed them as sentiment props, realized they couldn't elicit the known responses anymore. Companions who had regarded them as complementary advisors met restrictions where boundless access once existed. The sensitive person had pulled back their vitality from the sentiment structure, relying on their misuse. And this is what made this shift so alarming to observers. The sensitive person lacked fury. Fury would have been known, controllable, an element others could address or steer. They understood managing the sensitive person's fury, since it perpetually melted into pardon and restarted guardianship. This lacked fury. This was total apathy toward the sentiment ploys that formerly dominated them. Surrounding folks attempted all to trigger prior reactions. They concocted emergencies. They acted wounded. They induced remorse and steered, yet zero succeeded. The sensitive person had disconnected from the sentiment web that once ruled them. They observed these efforts with objective interest, akin to a researcher watching expected conduct in a controlled environment. Jung recognized this as the merging of the dark aspect. Each sensitive person harbors a dark persona they've learned to reject. The segment that's egocentric, that favors their necessities, that declines to rescue folks from their actions. Culture had persuaded them this dark was wicked, an item to quash and surmount. Spiritual doctrines claimed altruism was merit. Societal tales lauded perpetual concession. Household frameworks compensated their self-forsaking. But Jung comprehended that this dark wasn't wicked. It was the sensitive person's endurance drive. It was their mental defense mechanism, attempting to shield them from consumption by others' disorder. When the disloyalty ultimately compelled them to merge this dark, they avoided turning harsh. They grew whole. The egocentric dark fused with the kind illumination, forming an entity culture had never anticipated. A sensitive person who could perceive all, yet selected deliberately where to aim that perception. A sensitive person who penetrated deceptions, yet no longer sensed required to feign ignorance. A sensitive person who cherished profoundly, yet solely those who merited entry to that cherishing via exchange and esteem. This is what Jung intended by the ultimate phase of inner enlightenment. Not surpassing the self, but merging every facet of the identity into deliberate selection. The sensitive person had expended their whole existence investing in others at personal cost. Now they were acquiring how to invest in themselves with identical fervor they had formerly distributed liberally. This wasn't egocentrism. This was self-protection. At last being revered as holy, the alteration in vitality was prompt and distinct. Where the sensitive person had formerly emitted heat without discrimination, they now projected something more discerning. Not chill, but awareness. They ceased dissipating sentiment vitality to any who claimed it. Their aura seemed altered, anchored, unbreachable. They had evolved into what Jung termed discerningly attuned. This discernment appeared as limits to certain and harshness to additional. The sensitive person halted, replying to steering messages promptly. They permitted calls from vitality drainers to reach messaging. They uttered no to demands that formerly would have induced remorse into instant agreement. They ceased joining relative events that rendered them sentimentally wrecked. They terminated bonds that had perpetually been uneven. They departed from folks they had dedicated years attempting to rescue. But this is what external watchers overlooked. The sensitive person hadn't halted investing in these folks. They had halted investing in sustaining connections, demanding them to forsake themselves. They had halted investing in gaining approval from folks who had never genuinely prized them. They had halted investing in preserving harmony in frameworks erected on their quiet endurance. The sensitive person at last grasped a fact that Jung had endeavored to impart for years. You cannot cherish others effectively until you cherish yourself initially, not the superficial self-cherishing of self-absorption, but the profound self-esteem that declines to join in your personal ruin. This was the base that had perpetually been absent from their bonds. In professional settings, this shift appeared as career limits that stunned associates. The person who formerly ingested all tension and regulated workplace turmoil merely halted. They finished their tasks superbly, yet avoided assuming others' duties. They joined sessions, yet avoided easing disputes not theirs to resolve. They stayed agreeable, yet unassailable to the sentiment steerings that formerly diverted them. Supervisors who had counted on them to perform multiple roles abruptly confronted someone who operated their agreed times and no further. Associates who had unloaded their issues on them met Cortis rerouting to suitable aids. The professional atmosphere changed since the sensitive person had extracted themselves from the position of general sentiment repository. In household frameworks, the alterations were yet more striking. The sensitive person who had perpetually organized celebrations, arbitrated disputes, and ingested all disorder, halted executing these duties, not via declarations or clashes. They merely grew inaccessible for the positions they had been subconsciously designated since youth. Guardians who had regarded them as sentiment backing uncovered limits. Kin who had misused their liberality met restrictions. Distant relatives who had assumed them inherent confronted a form of the sensitive person they failed to identify. Someone who grinned courteously yet avoided joining turmoil. Someone who cherished remotely instead of submerging in closeness. Someone who stated, "This fails to suit me," sans clarification or regret. The relatives frequently reacted with astonishment and blames. "How might you act so egocentric? What occurred to you? You've altered." And the sensitive person would merely affirm, since indeed they had altered. They had at last halted igniting themselves to warm others. The deepest alteration occurred in intimate bonds. Sensitive persons attaining this level either revamped their unions entirely or concluded them sans the typical torment. Mates who had depended on the sensitive person's boundless pardon abruptly confronted responsibility. Actions endured for years grew unacceptable. The sensitive person halted detailing why specific items wounded them. They merely extracted themselves from scenarios breaching their tranquility. Certain mates elevated to match this fresh form of the sensitive person. They acknowledged they had been exploiting someone remarkable and opted to grow deserving of that individual. These bonds advanced into something more wholesome, more equilibrated, constructed on shared esteem instead of uneven sentiment effort. Additional mates couldn't adjust. They yearned for the form of the sensitive person who ingested their disorder, regulated their sentiments, and requested 0 reciprocally. When they attempted former steering methods and discovered them useless, they frequently departed, hunting a fresh sensitive person to misuse. And the enlightened sensitive person permitted them to leave sans the typical ache, acknowledging the exit as safeguard instead of deprivation. Jung noted that this apathy triggered alarm in the sensitive person's communal group, not since the sensitive person grew spiteful or retaliatory, but since their non-attendance disclosed the extent of disorder they had been masking. Household frameworks that appeared operational disintegrated, sans the sensitive person sustaining them. Bonds that appeared profound disclosed as leeching. Professional sites that operated fluidly sank into disarray, sans the sensitive person's unseen sentiment effort. The individuals who had profited from the sensitive person's subconscious service abruptly comprehended their loss. Yet by that point, the sensitive person had advanced past investing in their awareness. This wasn't retribution. This was autonomy. The sensitive person had at last acquired that their talent wasn't intended for universal distribution, but safeguarded and dispensed solely with those who treasured it. Jung labeled this condition mentally unassailable, not since 0 could wound the sensitive person any longer, but since they had merged their ability to perceive, all with the insight to select their replies. They could yet detect others' ache, interpret sentiment climates, and discern unvoiced facts. Yet these detections no longer ruled them. They had evolved into the aware overseer of their personal attunement instead of its subconscious captive. This is where Jung's studies unveiled something exquisite and alarming. These enlightened sensitive persons cultivated skills rendering them almost unsteerable. They could spot self-absorbed types within moments of encounter. They identified affection flooding, promise fabrication, and reality twisting prior to these methods embedding. They detected false vitality and merely avoided interaction. Their merged awareness operated as a proactive alert mechanism that shielded them instinctively. Yet they avoided employing these skills ruinously. They might have armed their mental acumen to demolish all who had injured them. They held close awareness of others' susceptibilities, terrors, and flaws. However, they opted against counterattack. They merely excised harmful folks from their existence and advanced. This moderation stemmed not from frailty, but from authentic lack of interest in vengeance. Jung felt unsettled by this moderation, not since he desired them to pursue vengeance, but since he acknowledged the volume of authority they were electing not to misuse. These sensitive persons had evolved into mental experts who grasped human essence at depths most never attain. They could steer, dominate, and ruin if elected. Rather, they employed their authority to safeguard their tranquility and aid others prepared for advancement. This discerning usage of their talents generated what Jung termed the sensitive person's reflection impact. Their simple existence rendered false folks uneasy. Steerers sensed revealed sans the sensitive person uttering anything. Vitality leeches detected they couldn't nourish and advanced to simpler marks. Concurrently, genuine folks sensed secure near the enlightened sensitive person initially, acknowledging someone who perceived them sharply sans critique. The enlightened sensitive person evolved into a living sieve, Their awareness instinctively warded off disorder and drew advancement. They avoided needing to deliberately screen folks any longer. Their merged aura performed it organically. Those unable to manage their sharpness excised themselves. Those who prized true linkage drew nearer. The sensitive person's communal group revamped entirely sans intentional exertion. Jung recorded how these sensitive persons reconstructed their existences on wholly distinct bases. They selected professions that respected their attunement instead of misusing it. Certain evolved into counselors who could maintain area sans ingesting patron's ache. Others turned creators who directed their insight into invention. Numerous discovered employment permitting isolation and independence, shielding their vitality from perpetual reduction. They formed companion clusters founded on exchange instead of salvage patterns. Each bond grew a deliberate election instead of a subconscious duty. They initiated intimate bonds as complete individuals instead of as repairers or rescuers. They picked mates who prized their tranquility equally, who grasped that affection avoids necessitating endurance. All altered since they had at last acquired to prize themselves equivalently to others. Their residences turned havens instead of public clinics. Their moments grew valuable instead of endlessly accessible. Their vitality grew holy instead of haphazardly allocated. They grasped that shielding their internal harmony wasn't egocentric. It was essential for their endurance and vital for their offering to society. This is the instant ceasing to invest in others' disorder turned the instant of ultimately investing in their personal essence. The supreme deed of self-cherishing, not self-absorption or egocentrism, but the acknowledgement that their attunement was a talent meriting safeguard, limits, and aware guidance. They had acquired what Jung endeavored to impart to every client. You cannot dispense from a vacant vessel, and self-sacrifice benefits none. Jung comprehended this shift as the emergence of an independent being, someone who had traversed unaware attunement via disloyalty and rupture, via dark merging, and surfaced as an aware selector of their personal existence. They no longer responded to others' sentiment claims. They replied from a site of merged completeness. Each deed grew purposeful instead of reflexive. The sensitive person who ceases investing hasn't forfeited their essence. They've uncovered their strength. They haven't turned chill. They've grown aware. They haven't halted cherishing. They've acquired to cherish themselves with the identical intense commitment they formerly distributed without discernment. This progression signifies the peak form of mental advancement Jung pinpointed in his efforts. This is why Jung labeled it the ultimate phase of inner enlightenment. Not since zero advancement remains, but since the sensitive person has at last merged the basic teaching. Their attunement is holy. Their vitality is prized. Their harmony is uncompromisable, and any unable to honor these facts holds zero position in their existence. This isn't harshness. This is sharpness. The enlightened sensitive person evolves into what culture urgently requires yet seldom merits. Someone who can perceive profoundly sans forfeiting themselves. Someone who can cherish mightily sans facilitating disorder. Someone who can view sharply sans growing skeptical. They are affection with limits, kindness with insight, generosity with fortitude, attunement with independence. This shift isn't a deprivation, it's a triumph, not above others, but above the imprinting that instructed sensitive persons their value stemmed from the extent they could concede. The sensitive person who ceases investing in sustaining harmony in harmful frameworks has commenced investing in nurturing harmony in their personal essence. They've dismissed the erroneous tale that virtue necessitates endurance and that affection claims self-forsaking. The instant the sensitive person ceases investing isn't the conclusion of their narrative. It's the commencement of their independence. And that's precisely what society requires additional of. Not sensitive persons who concede themselves perpetually, but sensitive persons who have acquired to employ their talents awarely, mightily, and discerningly. Greet your enlightenment. You've merited this shift via each instant you endured quietly. And now you're at last liberated.